what was your first published project?
Oh, I don't want to talk about that. I did anything I could get published. I started college when I was 17, and I started getting like any kind. I knew I wanted to do comics in college, but at that time, they didn't have sequential art classes or sequential art schools. I mean, I think the Kubert School was there. New Jersey, I think, is where it was. That might have been Mars. I majored in graphic design because that was taught as a synthesis of type and image. And I felt like maybe that was the closest thing to what comics were that I could major in. So I would try to learn from that and apply that to comics. And in the meantime, I would just do any kind of publishing job at all. So I think I got my first paying job when I was 18. But I say paying loosely because it was $10 a page, and it took me at least 12 hours a page to do it. So I was making like 75 cents an hour, which I was ecstatic about.
Yeah, you're a pro, yeah.
Yeah, I was a pro. It was like a passport into conventions, and I would sit at a table with something that someone else printed. And the funny thing about that is, I had a million jobs. I also got a job at a printer, and I worked it out so I suggested this printer to the publisher. And so I actually worked for the printer printing my own book that was published, by different people. And I was like, I was printing it and stapling it and chopping it and getting paid, like $4 an hour to print the book that I was paid basically like 75 cents an hour to draw. I had the printing job, a tutoring job. Okay. Yeah, I was like a painter's assistant, just like all kinds of small menial jobs that I felt like I used like what I called the pyramid system, where I would do any kind of job that I felt was somehow art related or publishing related, that would generate some kind of income, but also educate me somehow. And then I narrowed that down to just art-related jobs, and I narrowed that down to just comic jobs, and then I narrowed that down to just my own book. I sort of did it that way. And it was like that for years. And eventually I felt like I kind of learned a sense of the dynamics of not just the industry, but the way the books themselves, were put together and how they were printed and how they're distributed and how you get like your idea into a book that then gets into a store that people can buy. And after I'd figured that out for a while, I felt like, okay, now I've learned a few things, and now it's time to sort of do my own book that I create and write and draw, and that became Kabuki. And I started doing Kabuki when I was 20, and then it was published in 94, like a year later. So I guess it was published when I was 21, so maybe 3 or 4 years before I was able to do my own book, and then make a living at that book. Yeah,
and that's pretty good out of the chute. Basically the book got you to that.
Well, point. That's true. I was totally making a living and doing it, but I should also stress it was a pretty humble, modest living situation. Yeah. The less needs you have, the easier it is to sustain yourself. If you can kind of live off the land in as many different ways as possible, and then focus on what you want to do, that was fine. I didn't really I just limited my expenses, really.